We start with a promise from Hashizora's mom about a miracle, claiming that when the stars fall again, something life-changing will find him. That night, a meteor shower lit up the sky during their joint research, but it turned out to be the last time he ever saw his mother. 10 years have passed since she vanished without any explanation, yet he's still out here with a telescope in his hand, waiting for that specific meteor shower to finally return to the sky. He is hoping tonight might actually be the night it happens, looking for any sign of that promised miracle among the stars. His focus gets broken when a cold drink suddenly lands in his hand, thanks to Seiyu coming out to check on his progress for the night. She's worried about him being out here all alone this late, reminding him that they're supposed to be finishing their club project together. They made a pact to use this research to get into the same university. But their peaceful astronomy club days did not stay quiet for long. Word got out that the club was sitting on a massive research budget, which unfortunately attracted the attention of every delinquent in the building. It did not take long for them to snatch the club's bank passbook, and before they knew it, the clubroom had been completely taken over. Hashizora admits he already changed the account PIN to keep them from the cash. Hashizora spots a sudden flash in the night sky. Hoping for a meteor but realizing it is just a stray cigarette ember. Worried about the expensive club gear nearby, the burning ash lands right on his shoulder before he can move. The realization that they are not alone hits him instantly, and he turns to find Naga's crew has already cornered Seiyu. The group mocks them for being gloomy losers hiding out in the dark, while Nanju cuts straight to the chase about that changed bank PIN, facing a threat to his teeth if he does not cough up the code. Hashizora finds his spine and refuses to let them waste the club's budget. That bravado earns him a swift kick to the chest as the blonde delinquent pins him down to remind him of his place. She decides she's going to handle his attitude problem herself, but the kid is not done fighting and manages to grab her ankle. With one desperate pull, he sends her crashing to the grass, giving him a split second to scramble back toward his friend. The girl is not playing around anymore and turns her frustration on Seiyu, grabbing her by the hair and threatening to humiliate her right there. Seeing his partner in such a helpless position, he flashes back to the day he realized she was the only one who shared his passion. Flashback to the day Seiyu first asked him to start the club together. She was so full of life back then, and they even swore they'd make it into the same university. That memory snaps as the delinquents start pinning her down, with the big guy trying to teach the girls a lesson in control. He's too busy being a creep to notice the threat, until a heavy telescope tube slams directly into his head. Blood starts pouring as the guy tries to figure out what just happened, and there stands Hashizora, finally snapping and telling them to back off. The whole crew is stunned that the quiet kid actually fought back. But the shock quickly turns into pure rage from the guys. Seizing the opening, he screams for Seiyu to take the chance and run. The bleeding goon is livid that a little punk had the nerve to touch him, and Hashizora doubles down by threatening to call the police. He's doing everything he can to make himself the target, and it works as he bolts into the woods with the whole gang on his heels. Sprinting through the pitch-black forest is his only move left. Pushing his body way past its limit to keep them away from Seiyu. Every step is heavy and his heart is pounding out of his chest, leaving him gasping for air as he realizes just how much trouble he is in. Hashizora is completely gassed out, wondering where it all went south. His hands will not stop shaking as he realizes he was just chasing a ghost, all for the chance to see that one girl again. Strength leaves his legs and he hits the dirt, looking up at the stars and thinking it might be easier. If everything in his life just disappeared right now, that is when a tiny spark in the sky starts to grow, pulling his attention away from his own misery. It's not just a shooting star, it is a literal ball of fire screaming through the atmosphere. The kid can barely process what he's seeing before the heat hits him. This thing is coming down fast and it's headed straight for his position. A massive explosion rocks the woods as the meteor slams into the ground, sending debris flying while Hashizora scrambles to cover his head. Through the smoke and embers, a silhouette starts to take shape, and it's definitely not a rock from space. The guy stares in disbelief, trying to make sense of the figure in the flames. A girl with bright red hair steps out from the center of the crater, looking just as surprised to see someone standing there as he is. She's literally glowing in the middle of the burning wreckage, leaving Hashizora frozen as their eyes finally meet. Hashizora realizes he's staring at a naked girl from space, but voices in the woods mean company is coming. Panicking, the guy starts stripping off his own jacket, offering it to the stranger while looking the other way. She just stares back like fabric is a foreign concept, eventually asking how she's even supposed to wear it. There's no time for a lesson with the noise closing in, and the girl stays frozen as he tries to help. The bully bursts through the trees at the worst moment, forcing Hashizora to manually dress her in a frantic rush. This upperclassman is out for blood and ready to fight, but Hashizora blocks the crater to hide his new guest. The guy is baffled by the weird defensive stance, especially when Hashizora claims he's just in the middle of changing. It's a weak lie that makes him look completely insane, but a quick glance back shows the girl has vanished. The bully grabs him, demanding to know the real story, leading to a frantic rant about meteors and naked aliens. It sounds like a total hallucination to anyone listening, leaving his tormentor convinced the kid has finally snapped. The crater is completely empty, making the kid's story look like a total lie. The senior is done playing games and demands he stops the nonsense, while his friends show up to help him take back a mysterious pin. A 5-second countdown starts before the beating begins, but a massive explosion of purple energy cuts the timer short. Suddenly, that story about a naked girl does not seem so crazy anymore. A figure rises from the center of the blast, radiating enough pressure to make the entire group freeze in place. It's the same girl from before, but her presence is totally different now. She steps out of the light looking like a literal goddess, leaving the trio of bullies absolutely speechless as she approaches. While the goons are busy being distracted by her appearance, she locks her gaze directly onto the kid who tried to help her. Her eyes start scanning him like a piece of high-tech hardware, marking him with a digital target lock that only she can see. She identifies him as the owner of the start result power, demanding to know if he's really the one holding that kind of strength. He has no idea what kind of mess he has just stumbled into, but the senior is not interested in her questions and goes for a punch. The hit narrowly misses as the schoolyard brawl turns into a supernatural showdown. With the bullies already out of the way, Hashizora realizes the real threat is just starting. Sensing something unnatural right behind him, the glowing girl descends from the sky with a level of power that is hard to process. Her movement is so fast it barely even registers, leaving our guy completely wide open as she closes the gap. In a sudden burst of violence, both of his arms are completely torn away. The force of the strike leaves him bleeding out on the forest floor, barely able to understand the damage as he drops to his knees. He starts reflecting on that wish for the world to vanish, realizing this is not what he meant at all. Even while fading out, he's still worried about whether Seiyu and the other girl are safe. Out of nowhere, Seiyu drops into the clearing and kicks the entity away. Hashizora watches her stand in front of him as a shield, doubting if this is even the same girl he knew from before. Her eyes are glowing with a power that's definitely not human. Stepping forward through the digital distortion, she prepares to engage the goddess, making it clear that she's the one taking over the fight now. A heavy blow connects, forcing the divine entity to actually defend herself. Seiyu is not giving her a single second to recover, charging up her next hit with a massive surge of heat and energy. The two powerhouses clash in a massive explosion that levels the surrounding area. The goddess realizes the situation is out of her hands as she fades away. Seiyu reaches out toward the light above, letting her hidden power burst out into these massive, glowing wings. Her focus is entirely locked on ending this fight right now. That heat is so intense it is literally pouring out of her eyes. One final surge of energy rips through the entire clearing, and a dark, protective force cocooning her makes a bold claim. It insists that Seiyu belongs to it and nobody else. A massive black hole of energy swallows the remaining digital distortion. The explosion is so bright it clears the entire sky of the entity. Everything left behind is scorched and covered in small fires. Standing in the middle of the wreckage, Seiyu finally powers down. She looks around the quiet forest, searching for any sign of life, and spots Hashizora collapsed a short distance away in the grass. Dropping to his side, she desperately tries to wake him up. The damage to his body looks absolutely fatal from this close, but a mysterious light begins to flicker within the massive wound. This miracle starts closing the hole and regenerating his missing limbs. His body is literally being rebuilt by that strange starlit power. Seiyu can only watch in shock as the impossible actually happens. A lingering promise to protect him echoes through a starlit memory before Hashizora snaps awake in his bed with a scream. He immediately checks the arm he thought was torn off because the sensation is way too vivid for a nightmare. Trying to recover, he realizes a girl is sleeping right beside him. The guy nearly jumps out of his skin once she moves. Seiyu groggily wakes up, clearly annoyed by the morning noise. Hashizora demands to know who she is and why she is here. That is when he notices she is actually wearing his own shirt. Seeing her like that makes him completely lose his composure, so he quickly looks away and swears he saw nothing. He starts rambling about having bad eyes to explain the panic, but then realizes he can see every detail perfectly. It makes no sense since he is usually blind without glasses. The loose hoodie is making the whole situation much worse, and one look at her confirms he is in over his head. He begs her to fix her clothes while hiding his face. Seiyu finally speaks, calling him by his full name, Hashizora. Stunned, he wonders how a stranger knows exactly who he is. The battle in the forest is finally starting to feel real. The realization finally hits that every crazy thing in the forest was real. Seiyu reminds him she's the alien tasked with being his personal bodyguard. After a very long, awkward silence, Hashizora decides to just roll with it. He uses school as the perfect excuse to get some distance from her. The uniform goes on in record time while he tries to ignore the situation. Bag in hand, he makes a break for the door before things get weirder. This kid is practically sprinting to escape the madness of his own room because dealing with a non-human roommate is way above his pay grade. Just as his hand touches the doorknob and freedom is within reach, she tackles him from behind and refuses to let him leave. The sudden grab is intense enough to stop him right in his tracks. Seiyu warns him that going out alone is basically a death sentence. Apparently there are dangerous aliens everywhere just waiting to jump him. Hashizora tries to argue that the whole alien story sounds completely insane, but the way she's clinging to him makes it impossible to think straight. Before he can push her off, her entire body suddenly goes limp. The sudden collapse catches him off guard as she falls to the floor. She explains that her energy reserves are officially at zero after a long trip. It turns out she has not eaten a single thing in months and is starving. Seeing her like this means the escape plan is cancelled in favor of breakfast. Hashizora serves up a fresh plate of omurice to the starving alien. Seiyu does not even wait for a fork, diving face first into the plate like a wild animal. Bro has to stop her immediately and explain the concept of a spoon. He gives her a quick tutorial on how to break through the egg layer and how to scoop up the rice so she can actually enjoy the meal properly. Taking the lead, he feeds her the first bite to make sure she gets the hang of it. As he watches her eat, Hashizora starts to feel a strange shift in his own body. The girl is so hungry she nearly eats the metal along with the food. A quick glance at the clock shows it is almost noon, meaning school is definitely out of the question. While she finishes the meal, he tries to process everything that happened since she arrived. His vision is suddenly crystal clear, which makes no sense considering his usual eyesight. The bigger problem is her warning about the other creatures looking for him. She brings up the massive entity that appeared right after the meteorite crash. Just the memory of that shadowy figure is enough to send a chill down his spine. Seiyu warns him that this was just the beginning and more will be coming for his head. He starts piecing together the timeline of events from the previous night. It all started when that girl literally fell from the sky in a ball of fire. He remembers finding her without any clothes and trying to be a decent human being. The weight of the situation finally hits him as he realizes he is a marked man. Seiyu snaps him out of his spiral by calling his name, bringing him back to reality. Amamiya is still trying to catch his breath after that intense warning, but she just casually thanks him for the meal before dropping her formal introduction. Apparently her real name is a serial number long enough to be a Wi-Fi password. She makes it clear her only mission is to keep him safe from those hostile aliens, though the idea of this girl being a bodyguard is a lot to take in. She demands his absolute trust from here on out, even if he cannot pronounce her name. It turns out that string of numbers is just her official identification code, so he points out that Earth logic requires something a bit more practical. Since her code is way too long for casual conversation, he offers to give her a temporary name. He lands on Shiho, hoping it sounds natural enough for a girl from the stars. The logic is pretty simple since it is just Hoshi read backwards. And she absolutely loves the idea of having her own official Earth title. She's genuinely thrilled that he was the one to name her, leaving him to retreat and try to process the insanity of his mourning. He leans against the door, trying to reconcile her claims with her appearance. Between her looks and her energy, she definitely does not feel like a normal human girl. The biggest hurdle is her total lack of awareness when it comes to personal space. He's still stuck on the protection part and why he's even worth the effort, but the list of questions in his head is getting too long to handle at once. For now, he decides the most urgent mission is finding the poor girl some underwear. Hashizora realizes that as a guy, going out alone to buy women's underwear is a nightmare. Still, it's an emergency situation and he does not really have any other choice but to man up. Just as he is rushing out to get the mission done, he accidentally collides with a girl outside. It turns out to be Seiyu, who is clearly not happy about his sudden disappearance from school. She's been stressing out ever since he ghosted her calls and skipped classes without saying a word. Before he can even explain, she insists on going inside his place so they can finally talk. Panic sets in because Shiho is still hiding out in there, so he desperately suggests a cafe instead. Seiyu is not buying the excuses about the house being a mess or the sudden lack of running water. The conversation is cut short when the front door swings open and the alien girl herself steps out. Seeing a total stranger half-dressed in Hashizora's house immediately sends Seiyu into a tailspin. Shiho is not interested in introductions and wants to know why he's trying to leave during a high-risk time. Her tone shifts instantly as she begins scanning Seiyu to determine if she's even human. The suspicion quickly turns into a full-blown threat as she manifests a spear made of pure energy. She's convinced this new girl is just another alien assassin sent to take him out. Hashizora has to jump in and scream for her to stand down before things get permanent. The weapon stops just inches from Seiyu's head, leaving her completely frozen in place. He manages to de-escalate the situation by vouching for Seiyu and promising she's just a normal friend. Shiho pulls back, but she's still on edge because of the events from the previous night. She reminds him about the massive meteor shower that rained down on the planet and how that event basically signaled the start of a much larger invasion. Shiho warns him that from this moment on, anyone around him could be a potential threat. The weight of the situation finally hits Seiyu, who is already on the edge of a breakdown. And the sheer absurdity of everything causes her brain to just shut down completely. Her glasses hitting the floor is the only sound left in the sudden silence. Shiho finds the whole fainting spell hilarious since it proves the girl is definitely a normal human. While the alien girl treats this like a joke, the poor student is actually out cold on the ground. Hashizora rushes over to check on his friend before deciding they need to get back inside. He's stressed out of his mind, but Shiho is just vibing like she did not almost cause a tragedy. Once they are safely back in the living room, it is time for some serious damage control. A cold glass of water is the first step in trying to bring her back to reality. Seiyu slowly recovers on the couch, still trying to make sense of what she just witnessed. Hashizora realizes he cannot keep up the act anymore and decides to finally come clean. He looks her in the eye and admits that the crazy girl from earlier is actually an alien. Shiho teleports right behind him to confirm it, nearly giving him a heart attack in the process. She's weirdly proud of the fact that she just scaled a 4-story building to get through the window. Seiyu stares at her, trying to reconcile the gorgeous girl with the idea of a space invader. Shiho strikes a pose, fully embracing her identity as a visitor from another world. The full explanation takes a while, leaving the alien girl bored and sprawled out on the table. Hashizora tries to apologize for the madness, expecting his friend to be absolutely terrified of the truth. Instead, Seiyu's eyes light up with pure joy because she finally has proof that aliens actually exist. Hashizora cannot believe how well his friend is taking the news. Seiyu is basically a kid in a candy store peppering the new alien with a million questions. She starts rattling off potential home planets, but Shiho keeps it simple and names her world Misha. While the name is easy to pronounce, Hashizora is still worried about his friend's mental state after the attack. Seiyu brushes it off like it is no big deal, claiming that getting nearly killed is just part of the alien experience. Seeing that she is fine, the focus shifts back to the exhausted invader on the couch. Hashizora reaches out to check on her, his tone shifting to something more protective. He asks if she plans on hurting herself and the people around him every time she fights. Shiho snaps back that this adaptation process is not exactly easy for her either. According to her, every planet in the universe emits its own unique dimensional waves that imprint on its people. Since humans have their own distinct signature, she usually senses them intuitively, but her body still has not adjusted to Earth's environment, making her nose for aliens totally broken. This means she currently cannot tell the difference between a normal person and an enemy in disguise. Her brilliant plan to compensate is to just eliminate anyone who even looks slightly suspicious. Hashizora has to immediately veto that before she starts a one-woman war on the neighborhood. Seiyu agrees that laying low is the only option, especially considering what she found. She pulls out a flyer about a massive mountain arson case that seems way too specific. It turns out she did not just come over to geek out, she came to deliver a serious warning. When the police took her back to the site of the battle, they found the entire area engulfed in flames, and the only people the security cameras caught near the fire were Hashizora and Shiho. Seiyu suspects Nanju's gang started the fire, but Hashizora realizes they were just victims of the alien. This leaves him wondering what actually happened to the group after they were taken away. Meanwhile, a girl named Nagi is wandering through what looks like a hospital wing. A little kid accidentally lets his beach ball roll right into her path, and while she stops to pick it up like a normal person would, the interaction takes a dark turn before the kid can even finish saying thanks. She destroys the ball right in front of him without saying a word, leaving the poor kid crying over his toy while she casually keeps walking. Inside one of the rooms, the guys from Nanju's gang are trying to piece together their defeat. They can't wrap their heads around how Amamiya took them all down or why they woke up with broken legs. The two assume Nagi is there to visit them when she suddenly walks through the door. One gang member thinks he's getting a lucky break when she climbs onto his bed, but that fantasy dies the second she starts sinking her teeth into his hand. He's screaming for help while she pins him down, looking more like a predator than a classmate. His buddy can only watch as the situation goes from weird to life-threatening. She eventually stops and turns her attention toward the other bed, making it clear that whatever is standing there is not human anymore. A nurse eventually comes by for a routine check-in on the patients, only to find the room completely deserted with no sign of where they could have gone. The only things left behind are some empty hospital gowns and a few scattered bandages. The nurse walks back in and is immediately cornered by the patients she thought were bedridden. Nishio and Kane are standing there looking completely different, claiming they're fully healed and ready to leave. This makes zero sense given their injuries, but they are not taking no for an answer. One of them grabs her shoulders to keep her from moving, repeating that they are checking out right now. She tries to pull away and tells them they're still in no condition to be walking around, but when she reaches for her radio to call for security, the situation turns violent. A dark whip lashes out and strikes her across the chest before she can even speak, sending her radio skidding across the floor and cutting off her only way to get help. Nagi steps forward with a terrifying look, repeating the lie that they're all perfectly healthy. She uses her hair like a set of extra limbs to lift the nurse high off the ground, choking the life out of her until she finally stops struggling and goes limp. With the only witness unconscious, the trio is finally free to walk out the front door. The gang members follow Nagi's lead as she heads out with a single goal in mind. She is obsessed with finding Amamiya again and cannot wait to see how he reacts to her. Meanwhile, Hashizora is sprinting toward the site of a massive explosion she heard nearby. She arrives at the scene breathless, only to find the entire area has been completely leveled. Standing in the middle of the rubble is a massive, pale figure that looks like a new threat. Hashizora ducks behind a wall, realizing her friends were right in the path of that destruction. She starts to panic, wondering if Amamiya was caught in the blast and if anyone survived. Before she can process the tragedy, fire rains down as something else starts falling from the sky. One of the falling objects hits the ground and starts pulsing with a dark energy, and Hashizora is paralyzed as the thing starts to grow right in front of her. The girl finally snaps out of it and tries to run before those shadow limbs can grab her, but she is not fast enough to escape whatever is unfolding in the rubble. A massive shockwave of light erupts, leaving her caught right in the blast zone. Cut to Nagi, who's currently in a much better mood while she wonders how Amamiya is doing. She starts focusing her energy to track him down, picking up a faint signal that confirms he's still somewhere in the city. A blue pulse ripples out across the neighborhood, scanning every structure for his specific signature. Nagi is fully locked on now and promises to be by his side very soon. Oblivious to the hunt, Amamiya and his friends see the news reporting the mountain chaos as simple arson. The class rep explains that the gang did not just run away, but were actually taken out by the giant alien. The kid starts to wonder what really happened to those guys after they were captured. His friend does not seem to care though, just being happy the school bullies finally disappeared. The conversation shifts to the more pressing issue of getting Shiho some actual clothes after the morning's disaster. This little alien girl is way too clingy to let Amamiya go anywhere alone, putting his school attendance at risk. They wonder if she can transform her body to stay hidden while they are out in public, but that is apparently not an option for her kind. The suggestion of her sliding into a host's mouth to coexist in their mind is an immediate deal-breaker, leaving them back at square one while they try to figure out what an alien is even supposed to wear. Shiho does not really get why human clothes are such a big deal, but she remembers a trick that might solve their problem. Alien biology starts shifting right in the middle of the room, showing off the extraterrestrial version of a fashion show. The result is a biological suit that covers just enough to be dangerous. Amamiya shuts that idea down before she can even take a step outside. The group heads to a nearby department store to find something normal. Though finding human sizes for an alien proves to be a challenge, they end up waiting outside the changing room for 15 minutes, wondering if they should have gone in to help her out. Shiho finally emerges in a school uniform that is several sizes too small, complaining that the fabric is literally crushing the air out of her. The girl is visibly struggling against the physical pressure, and the middle button is definitely at its breaking point. It finally gives up the ghost and launches like a projectile, tagging Amamiya right in the middle of his forehead. With the tension gone, she can finally breathe again. Bro is absolutely stunned to see a manga trope happen in real life, which earns him a quick physical reset from the class rep. Their little comedy routine is cut short by a very unhappy store clerk. The clerk directs them to the register to wrap up the transaction. Amamiya pays for the new outfit while trying to keep his cool. Shiho finally gets a proper inner layer on to prevent another accident, and her new look immediately starts drawing a crowd in the mall. People nearby are already comparing her to a professional idol, which makes the assumptions about her and Amamiya even more awkward. Natsumi observes the shifting dynamics while the public continues to gawk. It is getting harder for them to blend in when everyone is staring. An old lady even mistakes her for his sister before he can correct her. The general consensus from the crowd is that they are definitely a couple. Shiho is not convinced yet because the clothes do not offer any defensive stats, so Amamiya explains that for humans, clothing is a super important cultural rule. Hearing that this outfit is a high-priority item changes her whole perspective. She gets right in his personal space to confirm she heard him correctly. Since he has given her something so vital, she vows to treasure the gift forever. This level of pure gratitude leaves him totally speechless, and he cannot figure out why his face is suddenly heating up. A quick pivot to lunch is the only way to break the heavy atmosphere. The group moves to a family restaurant to refuel after the chaotic morning. Amamiya is starting to realize that living with an alien is much more complicated than he imagined. Amamiya wonders if Shiho will stay on Earth once the dust settles, but first, he needs to know more about his pursuers. Curious about their true nature, he asks what these otherworldly threats actually look like. Shiho explains that the galaxy is full of diverse species, ranging from human lookalikes to parasitic shapeshifters. With so many variations out there, she warns that literally anyone nearby could be an alien in disguise. Amamiya questions why he is even a target in the first place, prompting her to demonstrate the answer right at the table. Reaching out, she senses a faint energy radiating from him. It turns out he is a living beacon for a massive source of power, which is why every hostile alien can track his location. This hidden strength is the only reason they're all hunting him. Suddenly, Nanju appears behind him to announce she has finally found him. The unexpected reunion leaves him completely blindsided, especially since she brought backup to address the previous night's chaos, while Shiho keeps snacking and watching the drama unfold. The trio suddenly drops into a desperate, floor-level apology bow. Now the entire restaurant is staring at the massive scene they are making. Amamiya tries to shut down the scene as Nanju and her crew keep bowing in public, and she explains it's all because of a dream where he died that made her regret everything. Apparently he's suddenly precious to her, which only makes him wonder if these three are even human. Shiho admits her alien sensing skills are still a bit rusty. But her instincts are definitely screaming that something is off. She causes a total scene by jumping in close to get a better look. While Nanju keeps up the sweet act, the girl declares she can spot a bad alien from a mile away. She unleashes her power right in the middle of the dining area, leaving everyone nearby wondering if they're accidentally walking onto a movie set. Amamiya tries to get her to stand down before things get out of hand. But she ignores him and lunges straight for the guys behind Nanju. Her strike passes clean through the tall guy's chest, and he does not even flinch as her arm sinks into his torso. Seeing him survive that blow makes it clear these are not human hosts at all, but rather actual aliens using some kind of projection or disguise. Nanju drops the fake apology immediately, complaining that they were actually trying to be polite. The crowd is still busy filming the special effects without realizing the danger, while the big guy decides he's done dragging this out. He makes a final demand to hand over the beacon so they can leave without any more trouble. Shiho does not wait for a response and sends Nanju flying with a kick. The bystanders are still trying to figure out if this is some live-action prank, but Nanju crashing through the wall makes it look way too real. Shiho makes it clear that Amamiya belongs to her and no one else, and she's definitely not interested in negotiating with these guys. Nanju picks herself up from the wreckage of the wall, looking like she's done playing nice after taking that hit. The vibe shifts immediately as she drops the act of being a normal human, calling the girl a selfish brat for trying to keep all the power for herself. Dark energy explodes from Nanju, filling the entire room with shadows. That finally convinces the crowd that this is not a movie set, causing a stampede as the rest of the diners make a break for it. Amamiya is just trying to figure out how a simple lunch turned into an intergalactic kidnapping, while Shiho stands her ground against the massive wall of dark tendrils. Nanju laughs and says she could not care less if the humans in the room die, as long as they get the boy back to their home planet safely. Their plan is to stick him in a special growth tank and raise him like a science project, which is news to my guy since he had no clue he was an intergalactic battery. It turns out he is the vessel for something called the primordial power, a massive energy source from the Big Bang that is supposed to awaken once he hits maturity. Nanju is already daydreaming about how strong that power is going to make her, laughing like a classic villain while she imagines finally reaching her goal. She tells Shiho to stay out of it, but that's clearly not going to happen. Our guy is still trying to process the fact that he's an intergalactic battery, while the alien orders her muscle to just wipe everyone out and get it over with. Shiho takes that as her cue to stop playing nice and let her flames loose, which has the protagonist panicking that she's actually going to murder these people. He begs her to just eject the aliens instead, but she thinks that's way too much effort. She decides a quick punch to the chest is much more efficient, blasting through the first host before the others can even react. The second guy tries to get a hit in while she's distracted, only to get a face full of fire for his trouble. Seeing her personal bodyguards get dropped so easily has Nanju losing her cool, but Amamiya realizes the real problem is that Seiyu is still caught in the crossfire. He tries to pull her to safety before things get even messier. But the alien is not about to let her leverage walk away that easily. Dark tendrils lash out and snag the poor girl before she can take 2 steps, hoisting her up like a trophy while the protagonist watches in horror. Nanju makes it clear that if he wants his friend to survive, he needs to surrender, giving him a simple choice: follow orders or watch her die. Amamiya immediately folds and agrees to go with the alien to save Seiyu. Shiho is not having it and mocks him for wanting to become a lab rat, but Nanju cuts the chatter by threatening to end the hostage the second anyone moves. The threat does not land the way she expected though, because Shiho coldly declares that one dead human does not mean anything to her. That level of indifference stops the protagonist in his tracks, while Nanju uses the opening to taunt him and tighten the leash on her captive. He starts begging them to just take him and let his friend walk away, but Shiho tells him to quit being pathetic and just let her die already. Fed up with her heartless attitude, he pushes her away to make his point and finally decides to lay his cards on the table. He reminds her that Seiyu was actually excited to meet an alien, treating the encounter like a dream come true instead of a threat. Since she cannot respect the person most important to him, he's done following her lead. The silence hangs heavy for a moment while the fire girl processes the rejection, until she suddenly agrees to let him go his own way. She suggests a proper farewell before they part for good, pulling him into a surprise kiss that catches him completely off guard. But the romantic moment is just a setup for something much more violent, as a massive surge of energy rips right through his chest and leaves a gaping hole. Amamiya is definitely feeling the weight of that fatal wound in his chest. Shiho does not seem to have any regrets about her sudden betrayal, and she just brushes him off with a final goodbye like it's no big deal. She even has the nerve to tell him he should have just cooperated from the start, while Nanju gets in on the trash talk by calling him a powerless good boy. But our guy is not out of the count yet as his body undergoes a sudden mutation, and Nanju's smug attitude vanishes the second she sees him changing. She starts questioning if she's actually looking at a high-level alien, and then he proves her right by tearing through her restraints like they are nothing. The whole room gets wrecked as he finally lets loose with his new strength, leaving Nanju completely frozen by how fast the tables just turned, and Amamiya is looking like a total powerhouse now that his true ability is out. Meanwhile, we take a quick trip to the far side of the universe. Way past the galaxies most people have even heard of. It turns out some high-level cosmic players have been watching this whole time, and they are not exactly thrilled about what just went down on Earth. They're shocked that a primitive species actually managed to wake up the primordial seed, which is apparently a huge deal that should not have happened on a backwater planet. Since there can only be one wielder of that power, this is a major security breach. And now a whole fleet of alien invaders is heading straight for Earth to clean up the mess. The Council warns that monopolizing this power would be a universal threat, calling it a catastrophe that would wreck the balance of space. Since one person holding that much juice is too dangerous to ignore, the Union already sent an enforcer who somehow botched the job. These high-rankers call the failure pathetic and wonder how a human survived. But they're already pivoting to a new plan to glass the whole planet. One leader remembers sending a specific exile to Earth ages ago, and a name pops up that makes the whole room go quiet. It turns out the monster known as Leet is already down there, which is the worst-case scenario for anyone standing in her way. This entity is famous for wiping out entire civilizations on a whim, so they decide to let her clean up Earth before the power fully wakes. Back in the fight, Amamiya is dominating with his new lava arm, leaving Nanju struggling to figure out how he is controlling that much heat. My guy looks like a final boss while closing the distance, and it clicks for Nanju that he absorbed that Misha alien's ability. He does not give her a second to breathe before landing a heavy hit, knocking the wind out of her as she realizes she's outclassed. Amamiya tells the entity to quit stalling and get out of that body. And Nanju finally hits the deck as her control over the fight crumbles. Amamiya is finished playing games and calls out the entity for being a total freak, which finally forces Nanju to purge the dark substance from her system. The entity slithers across the floor like a gross shadow snake, and our guy thinks he's finally cornered the intruder for good. However, the victory is cut short when he notices another body nearby. Seeing that Seiyu has collapsed and is currently lying motionless on the floor, Bro drops everything and sprints over to check on his friend, only to find her bleeding out right in the middle of his arms. The wound is way too deep and the blood just will not stop flowing, making him wonder if his new alien powers can actually fix her up. Misha suggests using that petrification energy as a desperate last resort, though she warns it might just make the girl pop like a balloon. Apparently, human bodies are way too fragile to handle that much raw juice, and she's actually shocked he can even use it himself at this stage. Amamiya snaps because he never wanted any of these cursed alien gifts, especially since they are the only reason his friends are currently dying. He did not ask for the power or the dangerous enemies that come with it, leaving the alien girl speechless as he finally lets out all his frustration. Sirens start wailing in the distance as help finally approaches the scene, but some creepy hair-like shadows are already creeping through the doorway. Nanju looks around at the absolute mess of a room just as a pair of boots stomps into the wreckage. This newcomer is not a regular first responder, screaming about how this disaster is clearly the work of aliens. The girl is thrilled to find two targets in one spot, leaving the group wondering if the police actually sent a crazy person. She claims being a cop is just a cover story for her real job, showing a specific interest in the Earth kid she's heard about. Nanju does not wait for an explanation and goes for the throat, figuring she might as well take out the intruder while she is at it. The girl tries to play it cool and says she's only there on orders, which only makes Nanju more aggressive since she thinks Amamiya is the target. Before the attack can even land, a weird green energy wall shuts down the entire fight. The newcomer tells her to take a breather and just relax for a second, completely neutralizing the threat while Amamiya stays focused on the dying girl. That's when a massive shadow starts rising from the floor tiles, towering over the room like some kind of eldritch nightmare. Amamiya can only watch in horror as the situation gets even more out of hand, but the entities actually bow down to welcome their special overseer, Leet. Leet looks over the room like she's assessing a crime scene. And the massive shadow entities do not even try to fight back. Amamiya is completely lost as the power dynamic flips, but Leet gives the monsters permission to look her in the eye. She wants to know if they're the ones responsible for the total disaster in the room, and even these cosmic horrors start stuttering out excuses to save their skins. The rules of the Galactic Union are pretty clear about Earth being off-limits, especially since interference in an unformed sector is a massive violation. The lead shadow starts begging for forgiveness, claiming he was just trying to keep the peace, while our guy just watches the groveling and realizes this cop lady is way higher on the food chain. Lead isn't buying the noble sacrifice act for a second, and she decides to take matters into her own hands by stepping in. Literally. She asks where they even got the authority to start acting like judges, and the tone shifts from a lecture to an execution in about 2 seconds. It turns out the whole peace thing was just a cover for a blatant power grab, and Leet does not have any patience for subordinates who lie to her face. The shadow creature does not even get a chance to scream before it's gone, leaving a cheerful official to announce that the punishment is officially over. Amamiya is left wondering if he's next on the list after watching a monster get erased, but Leet just focuses her attention on her special little earthling instead. Leet starts by lifting his head up to get a better look, wondering out loud what she should actually do with him now. This is technically the perfect opening to follow her orders and just dispose of him, but our guy is not begging for his life, he is begging her to save his friends. Leet finds it amusing that despite his massive potential, he is still just a sentimental human, especially since he is willing to give up everything for the people bleeding out around him. Amamiya offers her as much of his power as she wants, as long as everyone else makes it out of this mess alive. The cosmic official stares him down while he is on his knees, seemingly weighing the value of a desperate deal against her original mission. She reaches out again and asks a very specific question, wanting to know if he truly gets the weight of what he is offering. Giving up that kind of power is not just a simple handoff. And she needs to be sure he is ready for the consequences of the transfer. Without a second thought, the kid confirms he is all in, which gets him a sharp smile and a request for a moment of his time. Instead of a contract or a ritual, she goes straight for a kiss, catching him completely off guard as she explains the process. Since his power has not fully awakened yet, this is the only way to pull it out, and a dark core of energy starts manifesting right between them as the extraction begins. Amamiya gasps as the dark energy pours out of his mouth and into her, and she is clearly loving the massive boost she is getting from the kid. With the extraction complete, Leet crosses her fingers to focus that power before unleashing a blinding shockwave of green light across the area. The guy is completely lost as he tries to process what just happened, but Leet just calls it reverse entropy as she kicks off the restoration. She channels the stolen energy into a massive restoration pulse, which ripples out from her like a cosmic reset button being pressed. A massive dome of light swallows the entire neighborhood in seconds, reaching far beyond just the immediate scene of the battle. Even the local police station is caught in the wave of the spell, and people who were just dead or dying are suddenly standing around, completely clueless about the fact that they were ever in danger. Back inside the restaurant, the wreckage literally pieces itself back together. And the girl in his arms finally opens her eyes as the light fades. Every single one of her lethal wounds vanishes like they were never there, along with the rest of the group in the entire demolished building. Leet holds up a small scrap of the dark energy to show she kept her word, but she admits she cannot actually drain his full potential just yet. Since it is not fully awakened, she will have to settle for siphoning it off in small bites. Leet starts laying down some serious ground rules for the group, making it very clear that things could go south if anyone crosses her. The detective is caught completely off guard by the sudden aggression because Leet is dead serious about being the only one fit to protect Amamiya. She even considers just finishing the detective off right now, ignoring the guy's desperate pleas for everyone to just calm down and stop. Amamiya is still busy holding onto his friend while trying to prevent another fight, and for a second it looks like a real brawl is about to break out. He braces himself for a collision that seems inevitable, only to realize the murderous tension suddenly evaporated into thin air. Instead of a lethal blow, the detective just starts whining about her personal space, complaining that she almost ate the floor because Leet grabbed her way too hard. She laughs it off, satisfied that her part in this mess is officially finished. But as she tries to walk away, her legs clearly are not cooperating anymore, and she ends up face-planting perfectly onto a nearby sofa like a total pro. Leet explains that being away from their home planet drains an alien's energy, and between the time on Earth and that massive spell, this one is totally tapped out. With the threat gone, the rest of the restaurant finally starts coming back to life. And the regular customers are starting to realize something weird just happened. Everyone is just picking themselves up off the floor, having no idea they were ever in danger. Confused regulars start realizing they have been teleported from the hospital back to the diner, and while the staff tries to maintain some level of order, the group is still trying to process the sudden shift. Leet realizes they cannot stick around to explain the supernatural chaos. So he grabs the girls and makes a break for it before anyone starts asking real questions. They manage to put some distance between them and the restaurant, finally stopping to catch their breath. He's still trying to figure out the blonde detective's true identity and why she helped them, but his focus shifts when his arm finally gives out from the weight of carrying everyone. He drops the orange-haired girl right in the middle of the parking lot. Realizing that despite the detective's attitude, she actually kept her word and fixed everything. Back at the diner, another weirdo is causing a scene by treating a booth like her personal bedroom. The staff is pretty sure she's just a dedicated cosplayer in a police outfit, but the girl claims she just passed out from extreme hunger and needs immediate refueling. She orders enough pork cutlets to feed a small army, diving into the meal like she has not seen food in a decade. The taste seems to unlock some deep-seated memories for her, taking her back to a time when things were a lot simpler. She remembers a guy from her past, wondering if he's still as much of a handful as he used to be. Meanwhile, the night is getting a lot creepier for the rest of the group, especially for the girl sitting alone in the dark. She hears a knock at the door, but it does not sound like anyone she was expecting. Yaren's heart practically stops when the door finally opens. But it's just her mom wondering why she's still sitting out in the dark. The lecture about her late-night habits is short-lived as they finally head inside, putting an end to a very long and stressful evening. Over at Leet's place, things are finally settling down after the day's chaos. Shiho is so drained that she faceplants onto the bed without a second thought, ignoring the suggestion to actually change into pajamas before passing out. She's completely dead to the world the second her head hits the pillow, confirming the theory that aliens lose their energy on Earth, just like the girl at the diner. It explains why her life seems to revolve around massive meals and long naps to recharge, yet Leet still cannot figure out why she is so intent on acting as his protector. A memory of his mother surfaces, specifically about a miracle that was supposed to find him. He starts to wonder if this strange girl is the miracle he was promised, or if her arrival is tied to the ancient history of her struggling race. Back on her home planet, survival meant mastering the elements in a wasteland of fire. Her people had to learn how to manipulate energy just to stay alive, turning a desolate environment into a training ground for their unique powers. They mastered the art of condensing surrounding elements into solid crystals. A skill passed down to ensure every child could defend themselves in the wild, and it is how they can even harden their entire bodies into a rock-solid meteorite form. Shiho is completely blown away by the elemental demonstration, though her instructor insists it's just a standard trait for their race. Sensei promises that anyone can learn to feel the elements with focus, giving the rest of the students a chance to test their luck. One girl manages to manifest a small crystal on her very first try, and the rest of the class finds the process surprisingly easy to master. While the group celebrates their quick progress and newfound powers, Shiho concentrates as hard as she can to keep up with them, only to realize that she is the only one who cannot do it. Her best effort does not even result in a single spark or stone. The other kids immediately turn on her for being a total failure. Questioning her heritage and claiming her parents ditched a fake child, they continue to push her buttons by daring her to make a meteor. On a dying planet where strength is the only thing that matters, being an outcast like this is a heavy burden for a kid to carry. Sensei eventually finds her hiding away in tears after the class ends, stepping in to tell her that there is nothing actually wrong with her. She explains that some powers just take a little more time to develop, which gives Shiho the drive to start practicing alone every single night. determined to eventually repay the one person who showed her any kindness. Shiho keeps grinding in secret to prove she is not a total failure, and late one night deep inside her training cave, she finally manages to manifest a glowing shard of energy. It is small, but it is the first concrete proof that her power is real, sparking a surge of light that feels like a massive personal breakthrough. The girl immediately runs out to find her teacher and share the news, eager to finally show off the meteor she worked so hard to create. But the ground suddenly starts to buckle and shake violently under her feet, knocking her down and sending her new crystal tumbling into the dirt. A deafening roar echoes from the cave entrance, drowning out the midnight silence. Confused by the sudden chaos, she edges toward the exit to investigate, only to find the world outside turning into a literal furnace. A full-scale invasion is tearing the city apart as monsters rain from the sky, and she finds herself standing right in the path of a towering beast. The small victory she just had is instantly erased by this waking nightmare, as one of the creatures lunges forward with a strike of pure energy. The impact shatters the ground and sends a shockwave through the air, tossing her across the battlefield like she weighs absolutely nothing at all. She hits the scorched earth hard and struggles to even catch her breath, barely able to whisper a plea for the sensei to come and save her. Shiho looks up as a massive figure stands between her and the monster. It is her sensei, but the situation is way beyond a normal training session. The woman recites a cryptic code before giving a final order to stay hidden. She unleashes a blinding burst of power to end the fight right then and there, and the force of the explosion sends Shiho tumbling into the darkness. Everything goes black as she is buried deep underground away from the carnage, leaving her alone in the silence, calling out for help that is not coming. Shiho bolts upright in bed, gasping as the nightmare of the past finally fades. It turns out she was just dreaming of her history while her roommate slept nearby. Checking the other bed confirms the guy is still out cold and totally oblivious. A brief prayer to her old master follows, asking for a little guidance from above. This girl has finally tracked down the specific human she was looking for. This earthling is the one who holds the key to everything, so she makes a silent vow to keep him safe from whatever is coming next. But the guy is not exactly having a peaceful night's rest himself, as a terrifying shadow stalks him through a twisted version of reality. The monster demands he hand over his power while chasing him through the void. Running away proves useless as the creature corners him in the dark. Just as the pressure peaks, he starts shouting for Shiho to save him in his sleep. Before she can react, a mysterious new girl appears and starts calling for her Earth boy. Amamiya hits the floor hard as his nightmare takes a sharp turn. And that mysterious blonde girl is suddenly pinning him down to demand his energy. The vision shifts to a gruesome flash of his childhood friend, where Seiyu stands covered in blood and blames him for what happened. He can barely choke out her name as the world starts to warp again. This blonde intruder's face goes dark as she lunges for him once more, screaming at him to hand over his power right this second. He bolts upright in bed with a shout that should have woken the whole building. Clutching the covers, he tries to convince himself he is actually safe. The realization that it was just a dream finally starts to sink in. Shiho is still tucked away in the next bed, sleeping like a rock and completely missing his middle-of-the-night crisis. Our guy figures the sheer chaos of the last few days is finally breaking his brain. He really hopes those visions were not some kind of psychic premonition. A quick trip to the local convenience store serves as a much-needed reset. Nothing beats a cheap snack for making life feel normal again. He takes a moment to appreciate the simple piece of his tea and rice ball, though he is still a bit worried about Seiyu getting back home safely. The quiet morning is exactly what he needed to prepare for the school day, at least until the girl from his nightmare manifests right in front of him. Amamiya hits the pavement as the girl from his nightmare stands right over him. She calls him Earth Boy and acts like he's the one being weird for reacting, and tells him to relax since she's not actually planning on eating him. The two end up walking together while she explains how she spent the entire night, burning through all her energy just to keep the local alien population off his back. Amamiya realizes his presence is essentially a beacon for every monster in the galaxy. This girl is apparently some kind of overseer whose job is to clean up these messes. But she admits she could not quite finish off one specific snake that escaped. To make matters worse, she ignored a direct order to eliminate him, so now she's officially exiled. He asks why she would risk her career and home just to let him live. Her reasoning is basically out of spite, wanting to stick it to the Galactic Union, and she is clearly ready to start a full-blown rebellion against the higher-ups. This blonde powerhouse is not just looking for a place to crash, though. The details of her plan are way too complex to explain in a single conversation, so she lays it out simply. He's the one who has to take responsibility for her situation. Since she cannot go back the traditional way, she has come up with a wild alternative. They're going to build their own spaceship using his power and the help of the Misha girl. Amamiya is not sure how he is supposed to help, but she says he just needs to awaken first. She's after a massive amount of primordial power that only he can provide, and until that day comes, she's going to be his personal shadow whether he likes it or not. Amamiya's morning is already a disaster before it even starts. Between the orange-haired alien and Ray both declaring they're moving in, our guy has officially reached his limit and just wants a single moment of peace. Desperate to escape, he books it for school and insists that Shiho is all the protection he needs. The school day kicks off with him barely making it through the gate on time. Sliding into the classroom just as the bell rings, he manages to avoid being totally late. It's a relief to see Seiyu made it to school okay, but the mood in the room is still heavy. The teacher is not exactly welcoming, immediately yelling at him for skipping out yesterday without calling in. While taking the lecture, he notices several empty desks where his friends should be sitting. Nanju and the others are still missing, which does not make any sense given their situation. Their injuries should have been completely healed by now, making him worry they have run into more alien trouble. Before he can dwell on it, the teacher pauses the lesson to introduce a new face. A temporary instructor is joining the staff, and the atmosphere in the room shifts instantly. Amamiya freezes as the door swings open, already dreading who might be on the other side. And of course, the universe has zero chill because Ray just strolled in as the new homeroom teacher. Standing up in total shock, he demands to know why she's following him into his normal life. Instead of an explanation, the teacher gives him a look that's way too intense and slightly unsettling. The rest of the class does not seem to find her arrival weird at all, focusing their judgment on him instead. Whispers start breaking out about how weird and aggressive he is being out of nowhere. Looking around at the strange reactions, he realizes that something is seriously wrong with everyone in the room. Amamiya watches his classmates accept the impossible as if it is totally normal. Ray's influence is clearly spreading through the room, forcing everyone into a state of fake harmony. The kid is left wondering exactly what kind of hold she has over these people. Meanwhile, the missing students are trapped in a nightmare that feels all too real. Nagi is currently reliving the worst moments of her life while hiding in her room, and the weight of these past events is making it impossible for her to move. Her memories are dominated by the sight of her father being a violent, abusive drunk, and the mental strain is pushing her to the brink of a total collapse. Scenes of hospitals and family restaurants flash by as her mind begins to crumble. These are not just random thoughts, they're the residual memories of the person she used to be. The parasite lurking inside her finally begins to make its move, admitting it kept the memories of every host it ever chose to consume. It offers her a deal to stop being separate entities and finally become one body. This goes beyond just taking over a host, it is a proposal for total coexistence. The creature promises that this union will grant them both a massive amount of power, and once they have that strength, every desire Nagi ever had will finally come true. The memory shifts back to the moment her father burst into her room with a bottle, screaming about her skipping school just to stay home and stuff her face. He's coming at her with total aggression, ready to take his anger out on her again, but Nagi looks like she's finally done being the victim of his outbursts. Naga's resolve is solidifying as she refuses to let her desires slip away. Meanwhile, the school day is in full swing with a new teacher leading the class. This instructor is lecturing on the mechanics of an absolute monarchy, and she's actually an alien who has successfully infiltrated the school. Her lesson focus is on how superior orders completely override any sense of law or morality. Amamiya gets singled out immediately when she slams her hands onto his desk. The teacher wants to know if he knows the secret to surviving under a dictatorship. Total pressure is on as she stares him down, waiting for the correct response. Our guy plays along and says that absolute obedience is the only way to survive. That's exactly what she wanted to hear, so she tells him to keep that focus on the lesson. Other students are already picking up on her strange energy, sensing that something is very wrong. Without missing a beat, she casually transitions into the next part of her lecture. This alien seems to be enjoying her new role of authority a bit too much. Amamiya is left reeling, never expecting an actual alien to be teaching his class. He worries about the trouble she'll cause and wishes he hadn't left Shiho behind. Back at the house, Shiho finally snaps awake in her bed with a jolt. The first thing on her mind is her stomach, and she screams about being starving. It looks like she overleapt because she completely drained her energy the day before. She starts laughing while thinking of Amamiya, suddenly craving a specific meal he makes. But the realization hits that the room is empty and he has already gone to school. Shiho leaps out of bed and starts searching the house for Amamiya. She checks every room but the place is dead quiet, leading to a full-blown scream when she realizes he's actually gone. Panic sets in because she's supposed to be the one protecting him. After a second of silence to collect herself, the plan is to use her special energy sensing to track him down. She tries to lock onto his signature with everything she's got, but searching the entire area yields absolutely nothing. It's a total shock that his presence has vanished from her radar. Without a trail to follow, she just bolts out the door to look manually. Shiho sprints through the city, wondering why her powers are failing her. Doubting her own recovery, she wonders if she's just too hungry to function, but she should have more than enough juice after that long nap. While rushing past some kids, she hears them mention school ending early. That's the spark she needed, finally remembering Amamiya's morning routine. With a new destination in mind, she heads straight for the school building. Suddenly, her momentum comes to a grinding halt, leaving her stranded right in the middle of a busy intersection. An angry driver starts blasting his horn for her to move, but a sudden, sharp sensation in her head stops her cold. That sharp ping in her head is impossible to ignore, even with a car screeching to a halt inches away from her. She brushes off the angry driver because that sensation is way too close to be a mistake. Our girl takes off again, following the trail as fast as her legs can carry her. She rounds the corner, certain she's closing in on the source, but it does not feel like Amamiya at all. This energy is something much darker. She freezes as a terrified woman sprints past her, screaming for her life. Peeking around the side of a building, she finally sees the source of the panic. The sight is enough to make anyone's heart drop, as an entire apartment complex is being swallowed by a massive roaring fire. Bystanders are in a total frenzy, shouting for the fire department as the smoke rises. In the middle of the chaos, a little girl stands alone, crying for her mom. Seeing the kid brings back a flood of memories she probably wanted to forget. It looks exactly like the aftermath of a monster attack, haunting and familiar. Firefighters are doing their best to pull kids out of the lower floors, but there are still families trapped higher up, begging for someone to save them. Shiho cannot just stand there and watch history repeat itself. Remembering what her sensei taught her, she makes a split-second decision. A bystander tries to grab her as she steps toward the burning wreckage. But she's already airborne, leaping straight into the flames to help. Shiho ignores the shouting and charges straight into the burning building. Bystanders are in total shock that a schoolgirl just dove into certain death. Inside is a total inferno, making any kind of rescue look nearly impossible, but then she bursts through the flames with a mother and child in tow. Even the professional firefighters are stunned she made it out with survivors. After handing them over to safety, she barely stops to catch her breath. When the captain asks if everyone is finally accounted for, our hero looks back at the blaze with a chilling realization. There are still silhouettes trapped deep inside the smoke on the upper floors, so she ignores the orders to stay back and lunges back into the heat. The structure is failing fast as the flames consume everything in sight. She finds more victims collapsed on the floor, but something feels wrong. A dark voice echoes through the room, claiming the obstacles are finally gone. In the middle of the wreckage, a blonde girl sits frozen in place, while a shadowy monster whispers that she's finally free to do as she likes. The girl sees the collateral damage that has been caused to everyone else, but the entity does not care, insisting they take control of a hidden power. It asks if this destruction is what she really wished for, and the light in her eyes changes as she gives in to the darkness. Standing up in the center of the fire, she's not the same person anymore. The transformation kicks off with a massive burst of energy, rattling the entire floor as the heat in the room intensifies. Shiho finally bursts through the smoke only to find a familiar face, wondering why she's even in the middle of a burning building. It looks like the girl followed the group right into the danger zone, but Shiho is too out of breath to do anything but offer a rescue. The entity ignores her and whispers that the distractions are finally gone, even though there are still victims collapsed and dying in the wreckage. It tells the blonde not to hesitate or go soft now, reminding her that this impossible power is exactly what she wanted. The girl finally stops fighting and lets the energy take over, her eyes glowing purple with a strength that clearly is not her own. The energy spikes again as the room begins to crumble, clearing a path through the fire with another massive shockwave. Shiho is still completely baffled by the girl's presence here, wondering if she really followed them into this nightmare on purpose. And despite the exhaustion, she insists she is here to get her out safely. Something about the energy feels familiar from a previous encounter, leading Shiho to ask if this is the same parasite alien she dealt with yesterday. That weird accusation just leaves the girl confused as the shadows deepen behind her. Shiho realizes the girl has no memory of what happened yesterday, even though she clearly remembers her puking up that parasite. The survivors inside start waking up amidst the smoke, coughing and barely clinging to consciousness as the fire spreads. There is no time for questions, so they have to move now, and the two of them manage to haul everyone toward the exit. They finally burst out of the burning building just as it peaks. Sirens cut through the night as emergency services arrive on the scene. Medics rush in to take the last of the evacuees onto stretchers. Shiho is completely drained after burning through her energy reserves, having triggered some old, violent memories of a much larger war. But she's still hung up on that terrifying presence from moments ago. The blonde girl breaks down, crying out for her parents in the chaos. It is a total emotional collapse as the adrenaline finally wears off. Shiho watches the display, feeling the toll of the night's events. Meanwhile, the girl is secretly thrilled that she is finally above suspicion. The strain becomes too much for Shiho to handle standing up, and she hits the pavement before anyone can catch her. Firefighters scramble to get her into the next available ambulance, and the blonde girl just watches with a twisted smile while pretending to cry. The hospital is a complete mess as burn victims flood the emergency ward. Shiho finally wakes up, realizing she completely tapped out her energy during the fight. The blonde girl walks in, pretending she was just checking on her parents' room. She is laying the gratitude on thick, thanking the hero for saving her entire family, and keeps up the concerned act while checking if anything still hurts. A massive stomach growl interrupts the conversation before the hero can even answer. The hunger is hitting way harder than any of the injuries from the night. Sensing a chance to bond, the girl tells her to stay put for a second. Shiho just watches her go, still a bit dazed from her sudden wake-up. She comes back with a snack bar to save the day and claims she snagged it from a vending machine as a little secret between them. The hunger wins out immediately as the food disappears in a matter of seconds. Our hero is convinced this is the nicest person she has ever met. While the girl watches her eat, thinking she looks like a total airhead right now, she is suspicious about why Shiho chose to save her out of nowhere and how much the hero actually knows about what is living inside her host. The girl decides to test the waters by asking Shiho to keep an open mind. This story starts with her supposedly blacking out in the woods last night and somehow ending up back at the family restaurant with no memory of it. This risky move makes the internal parasite lose its mind over the potential exposure. The parasite is panicking, but its host tells it to chill while she fishes for info and spins a story about fighting a girl who looked exactly like a transformed version of Shiho. The hero takes a long beat to process this totally fake scenario, while the host holds her breath to see if the lie actually lands. Shiho's brain works overtime and decides the girl was just being used as a temporary vessel. She even fills in the blanks herself, theorizing that another alien must have wiped her memory. It is the perfect cover story delivered on a silver platter, and the blonde cannot believe her luck. Their private talk gets cut short when a nurse walks in to check on the patient. This lady is clearly not used to patients being this energetic and preps a needle for some blood work. She tells our hero to just relax and it'll be over in a second. But the needle does not even make a dent in that superhuman skin. The nurse is baffled when her equipment just bounces right off the girl's arm, and things get even weirder when every single backup needle starts snapping like toothpicks. A pile of broken metal is all she has to show for the effort, so she assumes the hospital got a bad batch and runs off to grab a fresh box. Shiho is just as confused as the nurse is about why the needles keep breaking. But a loud stomach growl from our hero quickly changes the priority of the day. The nurse eventually makes it back with a massive supply of new needles, ready to finish the job no matter how many it takes. Unfortunately for her, the bed is empty and the girls are long gone. Shiho is not wasting any time and starts inhaling every bit of food she can find. Getting her strength back is the only thing on her mind, even if the blonde cannot believe how much she is packing away. Watching the redhead eat triggers a dark memory for the blonde, bringing back the days when her home life was nothing but violence and constant hunger. Left alone with nowhere to go, she was just a kid looking for any kind of escape, until Amamiya found her at her lowest point and offered a way out. Her parasite snaps her out of the flashback, demanding she focus on stealing his power instead of moping. It mocks her for pretending to protect him when she really wants that power for herself, but the blonde has a plan. The parasite is skeptical since the redhead is strong enough to crush them both without breaking a sweat, plus there is always the risk of the overseer showing up if they use their powers to force the issue. To win, the blonde decides the best move is to manipulate her way into separating the redhead from Amamiya. She starts spinning a tragic yarn about her childhood, claiming she always wanted her parents to just vanish. Playing up the loneliness, the girl makes it sound like she was terrified until a certain hero stepped in. Turning on the charm, she tells the redhead she is the one who saved her and asks if they can be friends. The offer catches the girl completely off guard and she is so stunned she even drops her meal. It seems like the concept of friendship is totally new to her, so the blonde explains that friends are just people who stick by you when things get hard. This definition hits home for the redhead, changing her entire perspective on the girl in front of her. Taking advantage of the moment, the blonde reaches out and grabs her hands to seal the deal, finally introducing herself as Nanju Nagi to complete the manipulation. Shiho is completely sold on the act and Nagi keeps the mask on tight as they officially seal their new friendship. This bond is a major win for the blonde's plan, but the school day is not over yet. Their green-haired teacher bursts into the room with a stressful announcement, demanding perfect scores on the midterms despite it being her very first lesson with them. She claims centuries of teaching experience justify the high bar even if the students are skeptical. With exams only a week away, Hoshizora tries to lock in and focus on his own goals. He has seen plenty of impossible things lately, but he cannot let supernatural drama ruin his future. Memories of his mother watching the stars still drive him, serving as a reminder of the day she suddenly vanished without a trace. His father basically checked out after that, leaving the kid to pursue astronomy on his own. Getting into a top-tier university is his only real lead to finding out where she went. As the bell rings, the teacher warns the class to head straight home for study sessions. She is weirdly insistent about skipping any after-school detours today. Our guy is just relieved the day went by without any major alien incidents, though the sudden peace makes him paranoid about what Shiho is doing back at the house. Before he can make his exit, a classmate stops him in his tracks, stuttering through an invitation for the two of them to study together. It is a pretty bold move to get some one-on-one time before the big test, and now Hoshizora has to decide if he can actually afford the distraction. Talking with Seiyu actually makes things feel normal for once, almost like the chaotic alien life from yesterday never happened. She's still processing the fact that he just showed up at her place out of nowhere, wondering if hitting the books even matters when the world is turning into a sci-fi movie. Hoshizora is not letting the weirdness stop him though, arguing that reality is still reality, and he is not giving up on his university dreams no matter how many monsters show up. The conversation shifts to the elephant in the room when Seiyu asks where Shiho is, and she is genuinely shocked to hear the girl is currently home alone. Apparently he had to pull a stealth mission while the alien was still asleep, leaving him to wonder if he is actually making a mistake by letting a literal space traveler crash at his pad. Seiyu seems to accept the explanation for now, especially since his dad is out of the country and will not be catching them anytime soon. She's still a bit uneasy about him heading back to a house with an unpredictable roommate, even if the kid thinks the alien threat is just lying low for the moment. To her, there is no way a girl like that is just sitting around waiting for him to come home, a sentiment Hoshizora shares because he knows better than anyone how demanding she can be. Imagining her waiting for a home-cooked meal is a reality he is not quite ready to face yet. But the peaceful walk home is cut short by smoke rising in the distance. It turns out the fire is coming from the exact building where Nanju lives, and Seiyu's cold reaction to the disaster makes him realize she might hold a bigger grudge than he thought. Hashizora is stuck on Seiyu's cold comment about the apartment fire, struggling to reconcile this harsh version of her with the girl he knew. That old version of her seems long gone, replaced by a much harder edge. She notices his staring, but he brushes the weirdness off for the moment. It's confusing since Seiyu was the primary target of Nanju's relentless bullying. Instead of explaining herself, she just pulls him along toward his house. She is clearly in a massive hurry to leave the disaster scene far behind. The moment they open the door, Shiho lunges at him with zero chill. The alien girl tackles him right in the hallway, nearly knocking him over. Hashizora tries to maintain some dignity, but she's treating him like a pet. She's surprisingly proud of herself for actually staying home like he asked, which is a rare win considering her usual track record for chaos. Seiyu finally meets the alien roommate and the vibe is immediately awkward. Shiho is unusually cheery, even for an alien crash-padding at a stranger's house. It turns out she's been busy making a new friend while he was away. A wet footprint in a bathroom door opening signal a brand new problem. Nanju walks out in a towel, acting like she already belongs there. The timing is terrible considering her own apartment is still currently on fire. Hashizora can't believe his own bully is currently showering in his home. Shiho proudly introduces her new bestie, claiming she has cured her of alien influence. Seiyu is immediately skeptical about this supposed friendship, wondering if Shiho is being manipulated because she can't tell people apart. Sensing an opening, Nanju shifts gears into a full-blown pity party. She claims her life is in shambles with her parents in the hospital, and the sob story works perfectly on a gullible alien like Shiho. With her audience hooked, the bully decides to push her luck even further. She invades his personal space and mentions this is not her first time visiting. Hearing that sends Seiyu into a total tailspin of confusion and anger, creating some much-needed distance by physically shoving the two apart. Her priority is getting back to the study plan they originally agreed on. Nanju clearly is not happy about the interruption and gives her a look that kills. Seiyu does not back down, reminding everyone that midterms are coming up next week. She tries to kick the girl out so they can actually get work done. But Nanju realizes she can just use that as an excuse to stay. She announces she's moving in and joining the study group for the long haul. The news is a total nightmare for the two students trying to stay sane. They can't even process the fact that their bully is now their roommate. The living room dynamic shifts instantly once she makes herself at home. Hashizora and Seiyu are forced to focus on their notes while the intruder hovers. Nanju just lounges nearby and laughs at how easy it was to take over. Hashizora tries to set some boundaries by telling Nanju to at least be quiet while they work, but she just shows off a prank video and claims it is research for how the world works. Seiyu is already stressing about the midterm being only a week away, and the tension in the room takes a sharp turn when Nanju's expression goes cold. She reaches out and grabs Seiyu by the face before she can even finish her sentence, demanding to know why the girl is always butting into her private conversations. It's a blatant power move to remind Seiyu that she only cares about talking to Hashizora. The guy has to physically jump up and yell just to get her to let go. Shiho pops in and completely misreads the room, telling him to stop being so mean, since she still thinks Nanju is just a misunderstood friend trying her best to fit in. The bully goes quiet for a second, almost like she's considering how far she can push it. She eventually backs off with a casual shrug, acting like the whole thing was just a joke. Seiyu is left rubbing her face and trying to process the sudden burst of physical aggression. Hashizora decides that's enough for one night and offers to walk his friend home, while Shiho tags along for the walk and leaves the intruder to lounge on the sofa. He leaves Nanju with one final warning not to trash the apartment like she did the last time. That comment sticks with Seiyu as she thinks back to their shared history in middle school. She realizes she does not actually know the full story of what went down between those two. The bullying was constant, but the roots of their relationship go much deeper than she thought, leading all the way back to the very first day they met and the secrets they still keep. Back in middle school, Hashizora was actually the one reaching out first, offering snacks and making sure Nanju was taking care of herself. This kind of attention was brand new to her at the time, and it made him the very first person in her life to show any genuine interest in who she was as a person. She started following him everywhere, even cornering him in the hallways, just to find an excuse to spend a few more minutes by his side. When he mentions heading to the library to study, she's immediately on board, trailing behind him to grab a seat at his favorite table. She tries to bridge the gap by asking about his heavy astronomy books, pulling up a horoscope to prove they're a perfect match according to the stars. He's not having any of it though, dismissing the whole thing as unscientific nonsense. The guy even goes as far as pointing out the technical errors in her app's star charts, leaving her to drop the subject entirely while she asks why he studies so much. Hashizora keeps his motivations vague while the noise they're making starts drawing glares from the other students nearby who just want some peace and quiet. Sensing the mood, she leans in to whisper one last question before they get kicked out, getting close enough to make sure he's actually paying attention to her. With graduation coming up, she wants to know which high school he's targeting. His answer is an elite school that's notoriously difficult to get into. Hashizora admits he has a dream he's determined to make a reality. Nanju takes this in, realizing how serious he is about his future, and decides she cannot let the gap between them stay this wide. This sparks months of late-night grinding just to have a chance at catching up. When the results finally arrive, she can barely believe what she's seeing, realizing that all those sleepless nights actually paid off. She is officially heading to the same elite high school as her crush, but the victory is short-lived when a cigarette burns right through her acceptance letter. Her father mocks the effort, calling the pursuit of education a complete waste of time. He lashes out physically, refusing to spend a dime on what he calls a pointless school. Her mother steps in afterward with a handful of cash, promising to secure the tuition as long as they both just keep their heads down. Even with visible injuries, she tells Nagi that a few hits are worth the trade-off. This is the brutal price she has to pay just to keep her place at the school. In the middle of all that misery, she looks to Amamiya as her only escape, yet the version of him she sees in the hallways is not what she expected. She freezes when she finally spots him between classes, watching him share a genuine laugh with another student. Seeing him drop his guard like that makes her realize how much he's holding back from her. Now she's left with the realization that he has never once worn that kind of smile for her. Nanju is fuming because she thinks she's way cuter than the girl Amamiya was laughing with. She decides to take her frustration out on the girl, walking right into her in the hallway, and makes sure to grind her shoe right into the book the girl dropped. A fake apology follows, but the look in her eyes says she's doing this on purpose. Even as the girl tries to stand up for herself, Nanju just gets more irritated by her presence. The grudge is personal now, and she is not planning on letting this slide. While she's sitting at her desk, a group of popular students approaches her with a compliment. The leader, Seiyu, asks if she wants to join their circle of friends, and then asks for her name to make it official. Nanju realizes this is the perfect leverage she needs to deal with her rival, introducing herself with a smile that hides exactly what she is planning. It does not take long for the new group to corner the glasses girl behind the school. Seiyu takes the lead in the harassment, asking if the girl even knows why this is happening. She makes it clear that the girl has stepped out of line by being too confident, and mocks her for trying to flirt with guys when she's supposedly way below their league. The rest of the clique watches from the sidelines, cheering on the savage behavior. They're having a laugh at her expense until someone interrupts the fun. A voice calls out for Seiyu from across the yard, and it's Amamiya, looking for her after she blew off their scheduled meeting. He stops cold when he sees Nanju standing right in the middle of the bullying. The bully calls out his next victim after making an absolute mess of the current one. Nanju is left wondering exactly when her life started spiraling out of control. Seeing Amamiya beaten down like this just reminds her of the friction between their groups. The guys do not care about the damage, they are just enjoying the rush of the win. But for Nanju, the physical fights are not the issue, it is her rivalry with Kobayashi. She is convinced the glasses girl is the only thing standing between her and happiness. In her head, she and Amamiya were always supposed to be the endgame couple. That fixation is turning into a total claim over his life that she will not let go of. She's not the only one viewing any other girl in his orbit as a pest to be cleared out, as the competition for his attention starts feeling more like a high-stakes supernatural battle. Both girls have decided that Amamiya is theirs and theirs alone. While they plot, a professional hunter is finishing off another intruder on the streets. She's tired of Earth becoming a magnet for every piece of intergalactic trash in the galaxy. Cleaning up these low-level pests is starting to become a real drag on her schedule, but her sensors suddenly detect a massive power signature entering the atmosphere. A major threat is landing right as the group is trying to navigate their own social drama. Amamiya is oblivious to the literal meteor coming his way and just wants to sleep. He was really looking forward to a weekend of peace and quiet for once, only to wake up and realize both Shiho and Nanju have completely invaded his personal space. The morning turns into a total disaster when they are caught together in the same bed. Nanju tries to play it off like she was just too scared to sleep alone, while Shiho claims she only showed up because she saw the two of them together. The redhead immediately demands breakfast like it's her birthright, ignoring the awkwardness of the morning, but Nanju surprisingly steps up to take over the kitchen duties herself to clear the air. She figures since she's been crashing there for free, she might as well contribute something. A few minutes later, she puts out a spread that looks like a professional chef made it. Everyone is stunned since they didn't even know she had this skill set. But the talent actually comes from a childhood spent being forced to cook for others. The food is a massive hit, and for a second the house actually feels peaceful. Amamiya can't even remember the last time someone made him a proper home-cooked meal, though the cozy vibe hits a wall when he realizes something very important. He asks where she found enough food to make a feast this big out of nowhere, and a quick look inside the kitchen confirms his worst fears. The fridge has been picked completely clean of every single ingredient he had in stock. With 3 mouths to feed in days until his next allowance, they're officially broke. He tells Shiho they have to hit the grocery store immediately or they'll starve, and Nanju offers to tag along and cover the bill with her own money. Her sudden shift into a cooperative teammate is throwing him for a total loop, as she starts acting like a perfectly normal, polite housemate instead of a stalker. Internally, she's checking off her bucket list as her plan to live with him finally works. Nanjo remembers losing to Shiho when they were first starting out as enemies, but seeing the redhead completely defenseless now is a chance she is not wasting. Shiho barely has time to process what is happening before Nanjo goes in for a kiss that catches her totally off guard. The girl is left dazed and confused by the sudden move, and as her eyes glaze over, the ambush is officially a success. Nanjo is feeling pretty smug about her work as she props up the unconscious girl, while Amamiya is busy hauling a massive tower of food nearby. He spots Nanjo standing by herself in the aisle and stops to investigate, wondering where Shiho disappeared to in the middle of their shopping trip. Nanjo points off into the distance and claims she just sprinted away toward a good smell, sending poor Amamiya into a panic as he tries to track her down. He wanders deep into the dark warehouse section of the store, hoping to find his missing friend among the stacks of boxes. But as he keeps calling out her name, something dark starts creeping up behind him. Suddenly, these shadow tentacles lash out and snatch him right off his feet, wrapping him up tight before he can even drop his groceries. Nanjo steps out of the darkness with a look that says she's been waiting for this moment, telling him that he's finally all hers now that they're alone. And with that glow in her eyes, it's clear she isn't planning on letting him go anytime soon. Leet cracks open a cold one to finally unwind after a long day, trying to enjoy a rare moment of peace away from her stressful double life. She figures a drink under the stars is the only way to handle the soul-crushing grind of working a regular human job 5 days a week. But her relaxation is cut short when Pommel drops in to check on her. Catching her completely off guard while she's still trying to act like a local, the newcomer does not waste any time demanding why she ignored their leader's direct orders. Pommel even wonders if Leet's brain has actually rotted from staying on Earth too long. Since the girl will not fall in line, the plan shifts to erasing this entire world along with the subordinate who decided to go rogue. Meanwhile, Amamiya is struggling for air inside those suffocating shadow bindings. Realizing that Nanjo is a much more immediate threat than any alien invasion, his mind drifts back to the innocent games they used to play together, when her finding him during hide-and-seek felt like a harmless childhood memory. She always claimed to know everything about him and insisted it was her turn now. The kid remembers her as the bright and popular girl who always had a smile, the kind of person who would go out of her way just to talk to him. But that sweet image is starting to crack as he sees her current behavior. He cannot help but wonder what could have possibly changed her so much, or if he was just blind to the darkness she was hiding this whole time. Amamiya keeps telling himself that Nanjo has just changed, but he is starting to regret not reaching out to help her sooner. If he had just stepped in back then, maybe things would not be this messy, and she never would have ended up being possessed by an alien again. As she looms over him with those terrifying shadow bindings, he finally manages to choke out a genuine apology that catches her off guard. She is confused by the sudden change in heart, demanding to know what he just said, but the moment is cut short when a massive surge of energy hits the area. Nanjo is left reeling as she senses a presence far more powerful than anything she has felt, and the kid realizes he needs to find a way out of these bindings before things get worse. The shadows start tightening as she wonders if this new power belongs to Overseer Leet, only to realize that something even more dangerous has officially landed on Earth. Meanwhile, Leet is getting a final warning about her blatant insubordination, with her superiors threatening to strip her of her title as a special overseer. She honestly could not care less about the rank and tells them to go ahead and do it, making it clear that she's done playing along with the Galactic Union's rules. To top it off, she gives them a very human gesture to let them know exactly where they can go. Her superior does not quite get the slang, but the message of total rebellion is loud and clear. Since she has no intention of obeying, the time for talking is officially over, and the high-tier alien prepares to execute her on the spot with a massive beam of light. The execution beam comes down hard, but Leet is not going out that easily, especially since her superior considers her a high-priority target even on this backwater planet. Pommel explains that she needs to be eliminated before she can rewind time and stop the world's end, launching a direct strike that seems to catch the rogue overseer off guard. The high-tier alien is left wondering if this whole confrontation is some kind of joke, while Leet begins tapping into the time-bending energy that makes her so dangerous. Pommel demands that she stop messing around and face the reality of the situation, yet her follow-up attack fails to deliver the definitive blow she was expecting. Standing her ground, the kid is asked what she's actually trying to achieve here, as Pommel admits that her ability to reset the clock is as annoying as ever. It allows her to slip behind any incoming attack just before it makes contact, though the alien claims the massive power gap between them makes her eventual erasure inevitable. Instead of showing any fear, the green-haired girl just starts laughing in her face. She mocks how serious Pommel is being and points out their obvious fear of losing control, making it clear that everything the Union is doing right now is a total waste of time, since the legendary survivor Misha is already glued to the human boy's side. Hearing this name changes everything for Pommel, who finally realizes who really took down their enforcer. It turns out the Union's ability to hop between star systems only exists because they stole Misha's tech, and Leet points out that blowing up the planet will only scatter debris across the universe, with Misha's fragments mixed in and lost to the Union forever. If they blow the planet now, the fragments of Misha will just vanish into some far corner of the galaxy again, which is a point Pommel is actually willing to consider. Chasing a runaway across the universe is a massive headache she'd rather avoid, but she's been sensing a second presence lurking near that massive power source. The alien decides to handle the person standing next to the survivor first, leaving Leet for later. Back at the facility, the parasitic girl is busy celebrating her own little victory, staring at the massive cocoon and dreaming about the day Amamiya belongs only to her. She's already planning their future once they finally make it out into space, but her private celebration gets cut short by a sudden intruder. Someone is watching her, and the blonde girl demanding to know who it is quickly regrets asking. Pommel steps out of the shadows, immediately realizing this girl is definitely not the target she's looking for. The sheer pressure coming off the alien is enough to make the parasite realize exactly who she's dealing with. Pommel finds the girl's stuttering primitive and decides to take a closer look at this little creature. She closes the distance in an instant to scan the girl's actual identity, identifying her as a mental manipulation parasite and a Class 1 wanted criminal on the Union's list. It's pathetic to see a high-level threat clinging to a backwater human host just to stay alive, but the conversation shifts when the alien looks at the massive structure in the room. Pommel can feel a familiar power radiating from inside that organic cocoon, and she knows the parasite standing in front of her is the one responsible for it. Now she wants to know what exactly a low-level criminal is trying to accomplish with all this. Pommel demands to know the endgame, but the girl is so paralyzed by fear she cannot even get a word out. Realizing her luck just ran out, the parasite can only watch as the alien enforcer looms over her. Pommel casually dismisses whatever grand scheme they had because any plan is irrelevant once she steps into the room. She even offers a mock thanks for wrapping the target up so well, making her job as the cleanup crew a breeze. The word cleanup hits the girl like a brick, and she realizes her prize is about to be liquidated. Pommel starts gathering energy for a strike, making it clear she is not here to capture Amamiya but to kill him. The parasite realizes Pommel has zero interest in the power itself, she just wants the source destroyed. Panicking, the host reminds her shadow partner about their deal for the boy, but the creature knows when they are beat. It tells her they have to cut their losses and abandon the target if they want to survive this. The shadow warns that Pommel will not stop at one kill, and staying behind means both the host and parasite die together. It's a bitter pill to swallow, watching all that power and their potential host go to waste like this, especially with Pommel's energy levels continuing to spike as she prepares the finishing move. The girl knows that if she just stands there and lets this happen, Amamiya is definitely going to die, and the thought of losing him brings back a flood of happy memories. She decides she cannot let that happen at any cost, but her legs suddenly lock up and refuse to move. The shadow parasite is officially taking the wheel, declaring that it is done letting her make the decisions. It forces the girl's body into action, surging with power to push back against the alien enforcer. Even as her body is hijacked, her only thought is for the guy trapped in the cocoon. A desperate rejection of the situation echoes in her mind as Pommel's attack reaches its peak, and the alien tightens her grip, ready to wipe everything out in a single blow. The scream for everyone to stop cuts through the tension just as the energy blast finally connects, and the scene suddenly shifts to a dead-silent, frozen warehouse where the chaos of the fight is nowhere to be found. A frozen snack bar falls out of nowhere and lands right on the redhead's head, waking Nanju up in the middle of a literal mountain of ice cream. Looking around the massive industrial freezer, she has absolutely no idea how she ended up here, especially since her last memory was the intense showdown with the parasite. Her eyes lock onto a familiar figure standing nearby, watching her from the shadows. The confusion only grows when she realizes she is actually safe and sound. Hearing her friend mention that killing her was not actually necessary, Nanju panics, realizing she is face to face with an alien version of the person she knows, and starts spiraling over exactly when this transition could have happened. She tries to trace back their history together to find a clue, remembering all the times they shared snacks and hung out like normal high schoolers. Even their time at the public bathhouse seems suspicious now that she knows the truth. Despite the fear, she cannot figure out why she was spared instead of being taken out with the rest. A sudden sneeze reminds her that sitting in a freezer is not exactly great for the health, letting out a tiny burst of flame that does absolutely nothing to warm the room. Her energy is completely bottomed out again, leaving her shivering and desperate for a way to refuel. She notices the piles of frozen snacks scattered all over the floor, and decides a cold treat is the only way she's going to survive this freezer. Nanju goes to town on the frozen snacks to get her strength back, while a delivery worker finishes up his final drop-off for the day. He's feeling pretty good about himself after stocking up the freezer, but his mood shifts the second he opens the door to find a squatter. Seeing a girl covered in ice cream wrappers is enough to break his brain, and the poor guy loses it, wondering what kind of monster he just found. Our girl is just relieved to see a literal exit sign for once. Breaking through the wall was her backup plan, but a door works way better. With her battery finally back at 100%, she bolts past him, leaving the delivery man completely traumatized as she heads for the exit. Nanju's head is still spinning over Amamiya's obsession with absorbing more power. She can't help but wonder if their entire friendship was just a long con. Back at the main fight, things are looking pretty grim for the blonde alien. The short-haired girl is not holding back, blasting her with a massive wave of energy. Amamiya takes the full force of the attack and goes flying across the room. The power surge is massive, signaling that the fight is reaching its end. Collapsing on the floor, the blonde girl can barely even move after that hit. She looks completely broken as the blue light begins to swallow her whole. A dark vortex opens up to drag her away from the battlefield for good. The job is done, and the mysterious girl confirms Earth is finally out of danger. Amamiya snaps and charges at the Enforcer in one last desperate attempt, but the dark entity inside her is losing its grip on the host. It has never dealt with a human that fights back this hard against its control. The short-haired girl is not interested in the struggle and prepares to delete them both, sending the entity scrambling as the next attack begins to land. Somehow, Amamiya manages to dodge a blast that would have vaporized her parasite. Dodging an Enforcer's attack is apparently a big deal for a Class 1 criminal, and Pomelhout is getting tired of this snake slithering away from justice. Resistance is officially deemed pointless as the Enforcer charges up her final move. A massive burst of blue energy levels everything in its path. But when the smoke clears, the target has completely vanished from the crater. Amamiya is still processing the fact that she's actually breathing, because Nanju jumped in just in time to catch her falling friend. The redhead demands to know how long the lies have been going on, catching the attention of the Enforcer, who recognizes her as a Misha survivor. Pomelhout introduces herself as a member of the Galactic Union's Special Task Force and points her finger back at the criminal hiding behind the newcomer. Nanju is told to step aside or get caught in the upcoming execution, but she's not letting anyone lay a finger on her friend despite the betrayal. Amamiya can only watch as her former target chooses to protect her. Pomelhout mocks the idea of friendship, reminding Nanju she only came here for power, claiming the parasite's influence has already been neutralized and dealt with. But the entity inside Amamiya just laughs at the idea of being removed. While the Enforcer lectures her on the laws regarding unformed sectors, Nanju launches a desperate fire attack that gets swatted away like a fly. The redhead is not backing down from her declaration of friendship, though Pomelhout views the girl as nothing more than a host for a wanted criminal, since the parasite has already reached the coexistence stage. Extraction is impossible, and the only remaining option is to erase them both. Nanju realizes her friend is officially on the galactic hit list, but she's silenced as the Enforcer grabs her to finish the job. Pomelhout prepares to execute them both in a single blast, only to realize something is very wrong with the energy levels. The parasite mocks her again, pointing out that its power never actually left. It turns out the previous lethal shot did not have the intended effect at all, and a massive surge of power starts leaking from the target. Nanju's eyes flare with a strength that should not be possible for a survivor, leaving the Enforcer completely stunned by the sudden turn of events. Amamiya can only watch as her protector undergoes a terrifying transformation right before a massive pillar of light consumes the entire area. The protagonist is thrown back as he tries to reach out for Amamiya, but he is pinned down by dark energy and cannot move an inch. He sees a blinding light through the darkness and knows something is going south, and meanwhile the battlefield outside has completely spiraled out of control. Shiho gets caught in the direct path of a massive energy surge, sending her flying back as the shockwave clears the area. Nanju is the one pouring on the pressure with this overwhelming new power, leaving her friend battered and struggling to even stand up. The parasite inside her mocks the girl for trying to resist such a massive gap in strength. Another wave of energy washes over the room as the fight turns one-sided, but seeing this from his mental prison, our guy refuses to let them talk about his friend like that. A massive pillar of light erupts as his internal energy finally starts to react. His eyes flare with a new glow as he questions the nature of the cage he is stuck in. He remembers the blast hitting him but realizes he is still very much alive, and the heavy binds holding him down are finally starting to loosen up. He catches a glimpse of the real world and sees Nanju is in serious trouble, with Shiho also reaching her limit against the alien power. The realization that he has to help them forces him to fight against the darkness, even though the alien is currently dominating every second of the battle. He starts searching for any spark of power that can get him back into the game. He finally identifies this dormant energy as the primordial power, but realizing he has it does not mean he knows how to control it. If he does not figure it out fast, Shiho is going to pay the price. Back in the physical world, his body starts radiating a blinding heat, and he manages to intercept the next strike just in time. A massive shockwave tears through the warehouse, forcing everyone back as Amamiya finally breaks free of his trance. The parasite had Shiho pinned and ready for the finish, but the sudden surge of energy forces the alien to back off. The sheer pressure from his awakening levels the surroundings, leaving the rest of the team scrambling to find their footing. Shiho is barely hanging on after taking so much damage, while the creature realizes the ripple it sensed earlier was this kid. Amamiya ignores the threats and immediately checks the casualties, making sure everyone is still breathing before turning to the enemy. The alien is not worried and plans to just put him down a second time, but Shiho screams for him to run while he still has the chance. He knows he cannot stabilize this much power on his own, so he decides to share the burden by linking up with Shiho. The others watch in total shock as he makes his move to bridge their energy. The parasite realizes exactly what Amamiya is trying to pull off, and it is not about to let him stabilize that power. A sudden beam of energy cuts through the air toward the group, forcing Shiho to take the brunt of the impact before they can finish the link. She's thrown back from the blast, leaving Amamiya desperate to reach her. The creature is disgusted by the thought of them sharing energy, declaring that no more transfers are happening on its watch. It decides to just end the fight right here by wiping everyone out, focusing all its strength into a single, terrifying ocular ability. Nanju senses the shift in gravity and warns the others to grab onto anything solid. The enemy's eye opens into a massive void that starts pulling in everything nearby. Amamiya and Shiho struggle against the intense suction of the black hole, feeling themselves being dragged toward certain death. Just as they are about to lose their footing, Nanju uses her shadows to anchor them, catching both of them before they get swallowed by the void. She tells them she can only hold this position for a few moments, even though she's clearly dying of embarrassment from what she's about to say next. Despite the life-or-death situation, she cannot stop thinking about their transfer method, screaming at Amamiya to just hurry up and kiss her already if it'll save them. The villain watches the chaotic scene with total disbelief at their logic. The parasite is not about to let their ridiculous plan actually work, cranking up the output so fast that Shiho cannot even stay upright. Even the shadow anchors start to snap as Nanju is dragged toward the void, while that terrifying eye flares with enough power to end the fight right now.